So we're going to try something different today. We're going to make a quick rigid body simulation. And I'm going to make this into a cube sphere. So there's a cube sphere. I'm going to add one layer of subdivision. And that looks pretty lumpy. It's kind of weird, but I like it. So there's a ball. And we're going to make it a rigid body. And with a sphere bounds. Now when I press P, it falls. And then I can go into its material and set its elasticity to 1 and go to physics and do use material force field. And I think this also enacts the elasticity. It might be automatic, but alright, let's see what happens. Nope. There we go. So we got enough bounce there. So now I'm going to set this. It's going to record the animation. I'm going to let it play. And I'm just going to go ahead and grab this. Alright. So now we're recording keyframes. Alright, that looks pretty good. So now we're going to test it out. So there we go. There's our keyframes. So I'm going to go back to the beginning. And now we're going to go to the Blender render and do a new particle system. And it should leave particles as it falls. Oops, that's the wrong game object. So now it drops particles, but the particles are falling faster than it is, which are cool and everything. But I think we want those to not fall. So velocity we're going to say is 0. Then we go to physics, field weights, and set it to 0 for gravity. So now the particle should hang out in air and not just fall like that. So here we go. So now it leaves a trail of particles that dissolve over time, which are pretty cool. Let's try having a force field though that pulls those together over time. And then we're also going to add some drag, dampening and drag. And we'll have it pull those together using a force of -0.1. We'll see how fast that is. Okay, it's not quite strong enough. I forgot to turn self-effect on, so it might not have even been working. Let's see. Yeah, so now it's working. And it's kind of like a flame trail, but the particles are lasting a little bit too long and coming together a little too fast. So we'll do -0.25. And then we decrease the life just a little bit to, let's say, 30. And since each frame is keyframed, you can't skip to the beginning as easy. Next time I could just hit 0, but... So now it leaves this kind of weird trail that's still living a little bit too long. And getting there a little too quick. So I'm going to increase the drag and the dampening. And see what that does. I'm just trying to play with this so that they come together about right at the same time they're deleted. Okay, there we go. So now we kind of got this flame trail thing going. And I'm going to make this emit particles all the way through 450 and double the particles so they'll be enough. So there we go. And so the faster it's moving, the longer that trail is going to be. And those don't look very good right now, but we're going to do space quick smoke. And then I'm going to make this bounds really big. And change this to the particle system instead of the mesh that's going to emit the fire. And then I'm going to need to bump up the resolution on this quite a bit because of how big the sim area is compared to the size of the fire. So I'm just going to do 64. And then in the fire settings, we're going to set it to fire. And in the settings for the domain, I'm going to turn the vorticity down, and the density down, and the temp diff down. And then turn up the reaction speed. And then let's see how this looks. So now we have a bouncing ball of fire. So we're going to want to get rid of those halo colored particles. So if you take this texture that you're using for the regular one, and then go to halo, then turn it to 0, go back to surface, let's see what happens with those particles when I render. All I see is smoke. Oh, there we go. So now you can see those particles disappeared, I think. Where's that camera at? Alright, that's why. Okay. So now we go to the domain material and we turn off smoke and crank this flame rate up. And then dissolve 1. And then I just want to see how this looks. Alright, so we have a ball of fire that's falling, but it doesn't really look like fire. It looks kind of like a glowing lump. So we go to the bound and then density and turn it to 0.05, 0.01. Oh wait, this one, sorry. 0.1. So now we crank the emission up and decrease the density, and then I'm going to turn the scattering down to 0.001. 0 seems to not work, so that looks a lot more like fire, plasma, or... So there's that. And then next, if we do high resolution, and then start it over again, because it's got to recalculate all those physics. So each particle is creating flames. And then the particle trail can actually stretch further behind the ball the faster it's traveling. So it'll get that classic fireball look. And as you can see, it's still too dense. You can't see through the fire because it's glowing too profusely. So what we can do is go to the border and then go to the fire texture and do colors, and then there's this ramp here. So if I cut the alpha on this to 0.1, 0.2, and then we'll leave this at 1. So now the fire has a much more transparent look, but there's still this glowing central area that you can't see through at all. So I'm going to do plus and add another value, and then set this to 0.2, and then pull it all the way to like that. Now there should be a much larger gap area that's softer that you can see through. Yep. So you can see the ball through the fire now, but there's still an area that's completely opaque. So that's pretty good for my purposes now. Now I need to render out the whole thing, and then I'll post that result later tonight. Set the camera up now. Oh. There we go. So there's our frame. And we'll go ahead and bake out the particle physics now so you can see it. So now we've used the game engine to create a physics simulation, and then used that to create a particle simulation, and then used that to create a fire sim. Which is, I know, a little strange, but you can make a ragdoll in Blender Game, and then animate it and do things with it, and then use those same physics keyframed in cycles or Blender Render Internal to create effects. And I can do all kinds of crazy things in the game engine, and then we could use those to render out effects outside the game engine. So it is a useful tool both for game development and also for simulation. You can do some stuff in the game engine that you can't really do inside of the viewport.